Right. I think I can begin. I basically just so this is an occasion to just tell you a little bit about research at CCLS. As Francisca said, well, as Francisca asked me to, I'm very happy to talk a little bit about my own research um, as well. But it's mainly about my job, my role at CCLS in creating a positive research environment, an environment which fosters the production of high quality research, high impact research. And when I say impact, I mean social impact as well as intellectual impact within academia. So we want to produce research that has an influence on policymakers, that contributes to legal development, legal reform, and ensures that our voices as academics, coming from a position of independence and impartiality, are taken into account when laws are made. And obviously this involves ensuring that we have not just established academics doing research at CCLS, but also lots of early career researchers, postdocs, PhD students, and we also have the chance sometimes to involve LLM students in our research. We've had a program for the last couple of years, a research assistance program funded by the university, whereby promising LLM students have been able to apply to provide us with research assistance, and have been paid for it as an internship program. So yes, so these are things we want to carry on doing, and we want to expand them further. We want to introduce our own research assistance program that's internal to CCLS, so independently of the faculty or the university. We want to have our own program as well as the university one. And we want to maintain and even improve upon the very good results we have obtained in the last Research Excellence Framework exercise. Are you all familiar with the Research Excellence Framework?
I think this might be worth explaining briefly.
Yeah, I'll explain a little bit what the Research Excellence Framework is. Basically, because most universities in the UK receive funding from the government undertakes an exercise every 6 to 8 years. They undertake an exercise whereby they assess the quality of research that is coming out of the different universities. And by doing so, they can then take an evidence-based decision on how to allocate the funding that they have at their disposal, which sadly is becoming less and less every year. Now, we performed extremely well in the last REF, which was in 2021. The submission took place in 2021, and we received the results early last year. We performed very well indeed as a university, but not just as a university, also as a unit. So the School of Law is submitted to the REF as a unit. And essentially, in terms of the quality of our publications, we ranked 7th in the whole of the UK. So of all the law schools in the UK, there's only 6 other law schools whose outputs who have more outputs of better quality than we do. And we also performed very well in terms of impact, which is impact on society, impact on the real world. So part of what is assessed is case studies of how our research translated into real world outcomes. So for example, my own research over the years has led to a model law which was adopted by the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law by UNCITRAL. This is the 2017 model law on electronic transferable records, which drew quite heavily on my research. And basically I had to evidence this. So I had to get a letter from the Secretariat saying that they relied quite a lot on my research in drafting the model law. And it has also fed into the Law Commission's Electronic Trade Documents project, which led to a bill which is currently being considered by Parliament. It's going through Parliament in order to be enacted into a law. And I was seconded to the Law Commission to work on this project. And it again drew quite heavily on my research. So essentially, the time I spend on my research has translated into real world outcomes that could have a big impact on the way trade takes place in the future. So supply chains, digitalization of supply chains, getting rid of paper-based processes, which are very inefficient and very costly. And there are several examples of that kind of research in CCLS. It's all published on the School of Law research website. So if you want to take a look at the various things I've been talking about, just Google QMUL School of Law research, and you will find our website. It's divided into various sections. And one of those is impact, and you will see a number of projects. So to give you a couple of other examples, my colleague Julia Hornley's project on online gambling, my colleague Duncan Matthews' project on IP in pharmaceuticals and vaccines. He is currently working on drawing lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic and the vaccines that were produced and rolled out in response to the pandemic, drawing lessons for the future. How can intellectual property law be reformed in order to make these processes more efficient in the future? And finally, and I'm sure you've all heard of this, the Cloud Legal Project, which is extremely significant and is having a big impact on the way laws governing the cloud and the use of the cloud are developing, or standards as well as laws, as the cloud becomes more ubiquitous and we all become more reliant on it. So that's a run through. As I've said, a lot of my work involves creating the right environment for all of this to take place, ensuring that my colleagues are supported in their research, in meeting their research objectives. It's very, very challenging because our teaching takes up a lot of time. But at the same time, our teaching is very research-based. So you find a lot of courses at CCLS which are not available elsewhere. And the reason they are available at CCLS is because we're doing research in these fields. So I hope that in your time with us, you were able to take some of these courses and found them of benefit in your careers, in your subsequent careers. So this is where I'd like to hear from you. I'd like you to talk to me a bit about how you used your LLM and whether there was any research-based content there which you found useful after you graduated.
Okay, thank you, Miriam. So open to the floor. We'd love to hear from you. When you speak, please don't forget to unmute yourself and don't be shy. We're a small group and we'd all like to engage and hear from you.
I want to say hello to Reika because she joined after the introductions. Reika, it's lovely to see you. I don't know if you're able to put your camera on, but it would be very nice to see you.
I would have, but just in a little informal environment right now.
Okay, so no, I'll just enjoy hearing your voice.
So happy to see you, Miriam. So happy.
Yes. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Actually, I was working. So when you talk about impact of LLM and all, I was working with the oil and gas trading companies for some time, and it was amazing experience. In fact, there's a short break now that I'm working on projects for cleaner energies and wastewater, but I'll be going back to oil and gas. It's so, I mean, this all entire LLM education has been so helpful. Your course, etc., was amazing. In fact, the research work that I did has helped me in my work all the time. So I wanted to see what I can do more on this part. Connect with you again. I've been seeing your update on the new bills, and congratulations. It's amazing to see that your work has brought such a change in trading industry.
Well, I don't know if the change has happened yet. But certainly, for example, the Digital Container Shipping Association has committed that its members will move to 100% electronic bills of lading by 2030, which, if they manage to pull it off, will be an incredible achievement, and one which will certainly make waves, I think, have a big impact in practice.
I'm sure it will bring a lot of changes. It's quite a discussion even here in Dubai for the trading entities. So I believe there will be, I mean, I think there are already changes happening there, whether you feel it or not, but so many things are happening. So it will be implemented, I believe. And yeah, I think it will be good.
Yes, what will be fun is when the first disputes will start going to court. Although, I think hopefully, I mean, if it's done right, there won't be any disputes for a long time. And I guess even if there are, I think they will be the sort that can be settled out of court. So I'm a bit torn because I'm quite excited to see the first dispute going to court, but at the same time, I don't want there to be any disputes. I want this to work better for everyone than a paper-based system.
Yes.
So anyone did electronic commerce with us or IT law? Any of the people present?
No.
So no involvement with the cloud legal project, because that's one of CCLS's major achievements.
Or maybe some of you did a research dissertation as part of their LLM. Were you able to follow up on your research topic and what you're doing now, or any other research experiences you want to share? No? Okay, well, one of the questions I received in advance for Miriam was whether there are any opportunities at all for alumni to engage with us in relation to research projects.
Yes, so that's a really good question, and there are various ways in which alumni can engage. So we do things like run surveys and conduct empirical research. So one way in which we could basically ask you to become involved is to contribute to our empirical research projects, which involve, for example, interviewing practitioners in order to generate qualitative data about how things are done and what issues arise in practice, and what the impact of current law is on the ground. So a big example is our arbitration survey, which takes place every 12 to 18 months. This is a survey that's open to anyone to respond to, and I'm sure our alumni are very helpful in actually responding to the survey and also drawing attention to it within their networks. So that's one way in which you can be involved. We might also contact you, for example, to participate in focus groups which are really, really useful in giving their input for designing research projects, helping us articulate the kind of questions that need to be answered. And of course, I mean, when we have vacancies for research assistants, there's no reason why these can't be circulated to alumni. So we can draw them to the attention of our alumni team, and they can circulate them also to our recent graduates who might want to be involved in actually assisting us in undertaking the research. Obviously, if that does not conflict with your full-time job commitments. So yes, these are a few things. These are a few ways in which alumni can be involved. It's empirical research, particularly, is a pretty big challenge, because you need to. It can be quite difficult to gather meaningful data, representative data, about practice, actually, about how things happen in practice. And in order to be rigorous, research needs to go beyond what is just anecdotal. So we need to have a good empirical basis for our arguments. And this is one way in which you can help CCLS very much in kind, by staying in touch, receiving our newsletters, etc.
Well, another example is perhaps Miriam and I, we're currently organizing a conference on cyber risk, and one of our former students, so also an alum, is helping us. So he's now a qualified lawyer, and he's helping us with organizing the conference, and especially with drawing on panel speakers from practice. So this sort of speaking events or conferences, that's another way of getting involved, isn't it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Absolutely. And coming to talk to our students about the benefits of taking the research element of your degree very seriously, because even if you're not doing a dissertation on a topic you've chosen yourself, many of our courses involve writing research papers, so essays, coursework. And that's a really, really important part of your degree, because it teaches you skills that are transferable, that you can take into virtually any job you decide to do. It's so important to be able to have the skills to answer questions about the law. And these questions are going to come up all the time in your practice, and this is exactly what research skills are about: knowing how to answer the question, not what the answer is, but how to find out. It's extremely useful. It's a very valuable skill to have.
So many of you will probably have done a first degree at another institution. So you now will be an alum from of two institutions, at least, CCLS and somewhere else. And one of the questions I've been sent in advance is, probably based on that factual background, is, are we researching or collaborating on research with other institutions, and how?
Yes, we have various collaborations, which tend to be on an individual researcher level. So for example, we have collaborations with Stanford on the Cloud Legal project, and not just Stanford, but also Cambridge. So it's the collaborations can be both local to the UK and with overseas institutions. I have, on a personal basis, I collaborate with the Centre for Maritime Law at the National University of Singapore, and I was there on a visit just in January. So there, on an individual level, a lot of our researchers do collaborate with researchers abroad. We co-write numerous academic papers. So Francisca and I are currently planning, well, we're building collaborations with LSE and King's. And that's just an example. So yes, so for research, the collaborations tend to be on a project level, and they tend to be managed by individual researchers. As research director, I am working to build perhaps more formal, deeper collaborations with certain institutions. Now, you will probably have heard that we have a double degree program with the Sorbonne, with Panthéon Sorbonne, Paris 1. And that's already, so there's already a formal partnership there with the institution. And one thing I'm looking into is whether these teaching-based partnerships can be developed further to embrace also research. But this is all ongoing work. Yeah, time will tell whether it becomes possible.
Well, now, being a researcher myself, I get very deep into very, very specialized areas. So what I would like to hear from you, Miriam, sorry to use this platform to pick your brains, is as a research director and having this general overview of what researchers at CCLS are doing, are there any sort of big trends or any any areas where you see a lot of things happening?
Well, the main area in which we submitted impact case studies for the ref was digital tech. So technology law, the way technology is permeating everyday life, and more specifically, more particularly commerce, and how the law needs to evolve in the face of this new reality. So I think this is one field in which CCLS is very, very well placed to make a unique contribution, because not only do we have people who specialize in information technology law, and they are really well plugged into the different technologies, how they work, what they're able to do, how they can be used should the need arise. But also we have expertise in virtually every single area of commerce. So we can speak to not just the technology itself and how the technology should be governed, but also use cases in different fields of trade. We can talk about use cases in finance, fintech, insurance, insurtech, trade, so international sale of goods, cross-border sales. We can talk about the impact on intellectual property. We can talk about the impact on resolution of commercial disputes. We can talk about how it affects aviation. We can look at drones. We can look at shipping and transport. So autonomous vessels. So we can look at consumers and how it's affecting consumer contracts. So I think this is a field where CCLS is more than just the sum of its parts. you know, we have teams of people who can come together and make a really substantial contribution that they couldn't make on their own individually. So I hope that answers your question, Franziska.
Thank you. So now I've hogged the floor for most of the session. So dear guests, dear friends, please, I do invite you again, don't be shy, do ask your questions of Miriam. So I see a hand up over there. Hannah, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you as well, Miriam. Very insightful to learn more about CCLS. Obviously, I'm not an alumni of CCLS or Queen Mary, but you know, it's interesting to know what's currently going on. Just picking up on your final point, I'd be interested to hear more about whether CCLS are planning on feeding into the Law Commission's consultation on private international law and conflicts of emerging technologies, particularly because obviously you picked up on the fact that there's a lot of research that's already been undertaken with regards to the Electronic Trade Documents Bill, for example, in the UK, and obviously now we're expecting all the G7 countries and many more across Asia as well to start enacting their own legislation similar to what the UK already is looking to implement. Is CCLS planning on feeding into that work at the moment? I know it's very early stage of the project.
It is. So when you say feed in, do you mean as in respond to the consultation when the consultation is published?
Yeah, just I know obviously it's very early stage. We haven't even got a copy of the consultation yet because I don't think they're planning on releasing it until Q2. No, yeah. So I know.
Well, as
is it one you're keeping an eye on? Maybe is it one that you're kind of looking out for? Yeah.
Well, it's an issue that is certainly very sort of front and center for many people, because it's going to make a huge difference what the approach is to private international law issues. So just to bring everybody else sort of on track, this project is looking at digital assets and basically exploring how conflict of laws questions will be answered in relation to those assets. So, for example, would the situs rule apply? If you had to ask the question, where is this asset? Would you be able to answer it? And if so, how? Would it be better not to have to ask this question at all by saying, this isn't, this isn't an asset that is amenable to possession, and therefore we don't have to establish where it is. It's not a thing that's got a physical or sort of possessable nature. Now, that decision has been taken as regards electronic trade documents. Essentially, the argument was, if you can possess, and indeed you have to possess, a paper bill of lading, say, in order to exercise rights under it, then you should also have to have the same rule for this document, even if it's in electronic form. So the questions arise, how do we establish where this electronic document is? And this is the consultation that Hannah is talking about. What rules do you need in order to make digital assets work, whether they are amenable to possession or not? And in answer to your question, Hannah, we certainly have the expertise at CCLS to contribute to that endeavor. I can't speak for what my colleagues will be able to or will decide to do closer to the time, but I would certainly hope that we have that we are able to, submit a response, because it's a really crucial question. And it's worth making the right decisions. Also, because I think the UK is a first mover in this regard. It's a very early mover. And in this sort of field, if everyone's applying the same conflicts rules, I mean, all countries or as many countries as possible, that will really, really heighten certainty. Whereas if different countries are applying different rules, that's going to impact on predictability. So yes, everyone's watching the Law Commission quite carefully on this.
All right. Thank you, Hannah. Any other questions? No? Well, I've got one more question on my list, Miriam. When people read about research in a newspaper or hear about it on social media, and often it's to do with medical research, there are ethical questions involved. Do you ever come across ethical issues in research on commercial law?
Oh, you certainly can come across ethical issues. Essentially, we in academic research, when you are undertaking research that involves human subjects, and human subjects includes interviewees, even if you're interviewing people or getting people to respond to a questionnaire, etc. This constitutes research involving human subjects, and this has to obtain ethical clearance. So you fill in a long form that goes to our research ethics committee, and essentially they examine your application for clearance very, very carefully. And sometimes they will set conditions on giving you ethics approval. And often these conditions, in fact, almost invariably, these conditions will involve being very transparent with all interviewees, all research subjects, on the purpose of your research, on what is going to be done with their responses, on things like anonymity or confidentiality, on giving them an opportunity to review the transcript of their interview before you actually use it in your research. And all this has to be done really, really carefully, because otherwise your research will lack the rigor required to give it credibility. So yes, absolutely. In commercial law, you can come across some very clear ethical issues, especially if the subject you are researching is sensitive, and there are big disagreements as to what the policy should be and why. So yeah, we have to proceed. We have to proceed very carefully, and we don't even let our master's students writing a dissertation do interviews or use information they obtained from, say, conversations, unless they have ethical clearance.